G'day everyone and welcome back to Luke's Way of Looking. I'm going to be doing something a bit different today. It's going to be the first video in a series of real-time tutorials. I'm hoping that this series will be very beginner friendly and mostly just give people an idea about different ways that polygon primitives can be manipulated to create 3D models. First couple of videos are just going to be about navigating in Maya. The things we're going to go through specifically in this video are what you're looking at when you open up Maya, what all the different sections of the window do and what they're for. We're going to look at camera controls, creating a project, and saving a scene file. Okay, so we've just installed Maya. We've opened it up. What are we looking at? Hopefully your window looks something similar to this. We have 5 major panels to go through. The first of which, and arguably the most important, is the viewport, which is the biggest panel and is essentially our window into 3D space. The second panel is this little one on the left, arguably the least important panel, and one that we will probably be getting rid of. It just has object manipulators, move, rotate, scale. It's extremely slow and cumbersome to use the tools this way, so we're going to be learning the hotkeys. In fact, let's drag that out and get rid of it right now. This top panel is where the various tool shelves live. For the sake of these tutorials, we'll only be using the poly modeling tool shelf, but there are other shelves for sculpting, rigging, animation, rendering, etc. If we think of this as a physical workshop, then the viewport would be our workbench, and these tools in the tool shelf would be the type of shop that it is. For instance, if you did mainly woodworking, you'd have mainly woodworking tools in your shop. Metalworking, you'd have metalworking tools, etc. Since we're going to be doing mostly poly modeling, we're going to have the poly modeling tool shelf selected. The next panel is this one on the right. This is where we have a few different editors. It's quite likely that we're going to be using these various editors in future tutorials, so we will go more in depth into what they do when we get to them. The last panel is this one at the bottom, also largely unnecessary for the sake of modeling tutorials. This is the timeline. This is mainly used for animation. This is where you can scrub through, add keyframes, and change frame rate, that sort of thing. Now that we've gone through and learnt about the various panels in Maya, we have a very lonely space over the left side of the screen. So we're going to do our first bit of workspace customization and add something there that is extremely useful. So we're going to navigate up to Windows and then click on Outliner. And then we're going to drag this and put it into our workspace. The outliner is an extremely useful panel to have, and it basically acts as our inventory list. It helps a lot with locating objects in large scenes, as well as grouping, naming, assigning hierarchies, etc. And we're going to move on to the next section of this video, which is camera controls. You might remember earlier when I said it's not worth keeping the object control toolbox on the left-hand side. And one of the big reasons why I don't think it's a good idea to use that is because so much of the navigation in Maya is based around using hotkeys, particularly camera controls, duplicating, selecting pivots. So switching between using hotkeys in your workflow and buttons, especially for navigating, I think can really slow down the process. The hotkeys for the camera controls in Maya are holding down Alt, left click and drag is rotate. Now, the point that you'll rotate around can be set, but by default, it's the center of the grid. You can always refocus on whatever the center point of the camera is by pressing F. Zooming in and out is pretty easy. You can simply just use the scroll wheel. Although you can hold Alt, right click and drag, and that will also zoom in and out. This can offer some more precise control. And the last camera control is pan. Hold Alt, middle mouse click is pan. So those are our 3 camera controls. Rotate, pan, and zoom. All of them you need to be holding Alt to perform. Got a left click and drag to rotate around focus point. Alt click and middle mouse drag to pan the camera. Alt click and right mouse drag to zoom, or scroll wheel. Lastly, in this video, I want to show you about creating projects in Maya and the different ways that you can save your work. First off, we're going to look at creating a project. So I'm going to go File, Project Window. Going to pop up with this little window here. We want to click New, and now we can rename our project. I would recommend creating a new project every time you are looking to make a new series of designs. For instance, I might have one project which is robots, another project which is orcs, and then a bunch of different save files in those project folders. You don't need to make a new project folder every time you want to save a new iteration of your work. When you create a new project in Maya, it's going to automatically populate it with these subfolders. Most of these aren't relevant to us, but for the purposes of this video, the scenes folder and the autosave folder will be important. So we have named our new project. We want to select the location where it's going to create it, and it's going to create a folder with this name and these subfolders. So hit accept. So now that we've created a project, we can see what happens when we go to save our work. So I'm going to go File, Save Scene As. And as you can see up here, we're in the Tutorial Designs folder, which is the project that we created. And it's automatically put us into the Scenes folder, which is where it will automatically put you within a project to save your scenes. So now we can create our first save iteration. I'm going to call this one tutorial_scene_001. In terms of file naming conventions, you can use whatever you like, camel case and others. I would simply recommend not using spaces. It will save, but Maya tends to not like things with spaces. And for the purposes of making things work as efficiently as possible, I would not use any spaces in your file names. All right, so we're going to save that. Now, every time we save scene or Control S, it's going to save any of the changes to that specific scene file that we made. And if we want to create a new iteration, we can simply go File, Save Scene As, increment this by 1, save it, and now we're in Tutorial Scene 002, as you can see at the very top here. Manually incrementing and saving is the way that I like to save my work, just because I'm a little bit pedantic about file naming. But if you're not pedantic about file naming and you just want a slightly quicker way to make new scenes, you can go to File, Increment and Save. To show you this in action, I'm just going to create a new scene first. We're going to call it example and nothing else. And then we will need to change something to create an increment. So I'm just going to create a cube. Click on the cube up in the poly modeling shelf. File, increment and save. So it's created a new scene called example.0001. If I make another change, increment and save, It's created another scene called example.002. So that's just a slightly quicker way of creating a new scene file rather than going save scene as, changing it manually. It's not that much quicker, but it's just personal preference, really. Another really helpful thing to have set up is auto saving, which I'll show you how to set up now. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things that can make Maya crash, and a lot of things that can cause Maya to simply stop responding, which means that you have to force the application to quit, and then you could lose a lot of work. So I'm going to show you how to set up an autosave simply as a backup to your normal saving process. So we want to go up to Windows this time, Settings and Preferences, and then Preferences. In this bar on the side, we will find Files and Projects. And in Files and Projects, we have this section called Autosave. To set up Autosave, all you have to do is check Enable. And then there are some other options here like Prompt before saving. So Maya will give you a little pop-up asking you if you want to do the autosave or not. And the interval. And the interval is in minutes. Generally, I like to set mine to once every hour, just to limit the amount of pop-ups I get, but also not lose any more than 1 hour of work. So click Save to save those settings. And then once every hour, you'll get a pop-up asking if you want to autosave. And through the magic of video editing, we have our little autosave pop-up. We can choose to accept the autosave or reject it. I'm going to accept it. The only other thing to note is that autosaves will be stored in a different directory to the scene files. So I'll just show you where they are now. Go File, Open Scene. Just going to go up into our project folder. So we have a separate folder called Autosave, which we mentioned before. And in there will be our autosaves. So there you go. There's our basic overview of the layout of Maya. We've discussed what the different panels are inside the window, where we can find different types of tools, the camera controls, and how to create a project and save our work. In the next video, I'm going to go over creating polygon primitives, the different object manipulators and the hotkeys for those, the different components of objects, and a bunch of other stuff. So stick around if you want to learn a bit more. Thanks for watching this one, guys. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy this type of video, if you want to see more tutorials. I do have more of the normal design focused videos in the pipeline, so don't stress if you're not a fan of the tutorials, and I will catch you all in the next video. All right, bye.